Bolt your windows. Lock your doors. Check your closets. Look under your bed. And then prepare yourself. For it's another episode of Dark Night of the Podcast.
Roger? Roger? You better come get your critter before I chop his head off.
You get your hands off of Spinner, you fucking bitch. Oh, Troy, I would never have let that old bitch ever get her hands on my pet, be it dog or guinea pig.
Well, you know, if the daughter would have responded like you just did, that guinea pig would still be alive.
I know, to this very day.
She was too busy doing a seance with her dead father to care, so.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Forgot about that whole seance aspect of this film that we're definitely going to be getting deep into because it's absolutely a mysterious element that I don't think is explained nearly enough.
But what is it? But what is explained in this movie, Roger?
But you know what? Do I want it explained? Honestly, that's the question of the day.
There are so many questions that this movie just leaves wide open.
Oh my God. Like, why are the people the ones that survived? That's one of the questions I have.
Why has not the state of Arkansas or whatever frickin' state why haven't they condemned this motel?
Oh my God.
It is the biggest. It is not suitable for human inhabitants.
The only thing that pushed me through that, made me find it acceptable or palatable was the fact it was Arkansas to begin with. No offense to listeners in Arkansas. But I feel like if there's any state you can get away with a hotel that has a mysterious, apparently sprawling maze but buried beneath it and such animal infestation, I feel like the only place you could really get away with this would be someplace like Arkansas.
That's a good point.
It is. But my God.
Yeah, we have a lot. This is going to be a fun. Folks, if you don't know by the description of the episode, we are discussing the 1983 slasher flick Mountaintop Motel Massacre, which has one of the best taglines to come out of the 80s. Please do not disturb Evelyn. She already is.
That's a good one.
It is a good one. And you know what? This is one that, when I talk about like the golden age of the slasher genre for me. I grew up in the 80s. I believe you did too for the most part, right?
I mean, I was 4 when
but you kind of were there for the kind of the tail end of the 80s slasher craze, right? And I'm assuming, do you remember like Blockbuster videos?
Oh my
or going
God.
To the mama? Okay, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
This is one of the box art covers that just intrigued me as a kid for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
It is to me one of the probably standout box art covers of the 80s. Definitely caught my attention as a kid, and it took a long time for me to actually be able to see it. And I remember watching it as a kid, and I think as a child, this film potentially moves a little too slow to keep interest to a kid. So I didn't remember much about it. So I wanted to really revisit it for the podcast because I haven't seen this movie. Oh God, I'm going to say 30 years probably.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I remembered very deep minor things about it. Like I do remember the guinea pig at the beginning getting killed. That had an impact on me. I do remember the tunnels underneath and the snake. I do remember that stuff, but it's been literally about 30 years since I saw this. So I'm like, I want to revisit this film because as I'm, scrolling through Tubi and whatnot to find stuff to watch, it always pops up. I always see the VHS or the cover art. I'm like, it takes me back to that nostalgic time in the 80s in my local mom and pop video store. So I was like, I want to rewatch this. And lo and behold, we did. And I have a lot to say about it.
This is one of my favorite combinations for us, is the film that you are passionate about up against a film that I have not seen. I mean, we have all kinds of different setups for these reviews. Sometimes you haven't seen it, sometimes I haven't seen it, sometimes together we both haven't. And I always like it when you come into this very passionate and I'm clueless, because a lot of times you do introduce me to films that, even if I don't love them, it makes sense why they've stuck with you. You know, a lot of these films have something about them that just makes them memorable, for the good or the bad. And this film, I will say, like, while it's definitely got a lot of aspects that I'm going to critique or question, I'm also coming away from this as a first time viewer kind of in several regards impressed with this film. And I didn't anticipate to be impressed with it, having a title like Mountaintop fucking Motel Massacre. I mean, it definitely exceeds my expectations based solely off of what a title like that is presenting to the table. This film offers some great moments of drama, some great moments of suspense. There's some sequences that are actually very well executed. But one thing I also took away from this movie that I'm going to get into several times, so I just want to kind of set the groundwork now, is within the genre, special effects can make or break a film. And unfortunately, for all of the things I found positive to take away from this movie, this is an example of a movie that I feel the legacy has like greatly diminished, greatly in part to the unusually bad gore and makeup effects throughout the course of this film. This movie definitely disappoints when it comes to like the reveals. Especially unfortunate is the fact that a lot of the buildups to some of these sequences are actually quite well handled.
Well, I think the problem was the fact that the transfers, if you watch this on Tubi or one of the streaming, channels, it's the version that's been restored or cleaned up a bit. And you can definitely tell that the effects are definitely subpar. I mean, they're not even, I wouldn't even say they're close to being anywhere near good. They're sloppy, but in the old VHS copy, that was grainy and whatnot, they didn't look as bad. So this is a film that I feel like the fact that it got a Blu-ray treatment and the transfer got cleaned up and restored, I think that actually hurt this film quite a bit. I mean, because even like the scenes in like the tunnel, that we'll talk about, were much more effective. I would feel like like on the grainy VHS.
I'm sure that that's the case with those sequences, but I still got to say now some of those moments with the shadow play and what have you, still, even in the restored edition that I did view, still left me impressed. Again, impressed. This the kind of building tension that this film has at several points in the film. There are moments that I actually feel a palpable swelling element of suspense that carries through these moments quite nicely, quite dramatic. It's pretty masterfully played. And when you're thinking of what the storyline actually is, like when you sit back and you're like, this is the story, the film still manages to like handle itself with more like care and nuance at certain points than I again would have anticipated from a film entitled Mountaintop Motel Massacre. It feels polished. It feels polished.
This film is very atmospheric as well. And I use that word. There's a handful of films that came out of the 80s that I feel like have a very strong atmosphere to them. And this is one of them. But we're going to get to it. We're going to dive right into Mountaintop Motel Massacre without beforehand, doing our weekly little plug of our Patreon.
It's a song and dance. Da da da.
We need to get some more patrons. We have so much stuff up there now. I was surprised that like we have literally, guys, we have like 10 total episodes up. We have 6 full length reviews, and then we have 4 mini episodes where we do like a little short half-hour episodes where we do. So far, we've been doing our top 3. We did like our top 3 underrated final girls. So just check it out. If you've listened to all our episodes and you want more, join the Patreon. There's, like I said, there's 10 episodes up right now that you can dive into, and we're going to record our next one this weekend, and we already have our Patreon picks for January.
If you're not submitting, you're a fool. I'm sorry. I mean, like the number of episodes just keeps climbing because we are not missing a beat, and we're on each other's asses. We're both very paranoid about missing a beat. So we assure you, you're going to get your fucking goods if that's something you're worried about before giving us $2 to see what we can give you. But I mean, I think honestly, our next episodes, Troy, I think we've got some very fun things coming up, and I think just announce them. Like, just tell them what they got coming. Let them know. There's no way they're going to sign up if they don't know that there's more good shit on the horizon.
Oh, there is more good shit. What are we doing? We're doing our mini episode for January. We're gonna choose our top 3 choices for a part 2 of a franchise.
I love it. I've got mine picked. I've got them.
So do I. We're recording that this weekend, so that'll be up on the Patreon probably Sunday or Monday. And then we're doing your choice for your film is what?
The choice for my the choice for my film is oh my god, I think is it 2000, it's like 2003, 2004. The date really doesn't matter. It's Decoys. Who the fuck hasn't seen Decoys? Troy hasn't seen Decoys.
I haven't seen Decoys. I never even know I've never even heard of it.
Well, get ready because we talk about that calendar, Troy. There's several specific scenes we'll be recreating in our 2023 holiday calendar. We'll be releasing at the end of the year.
So guys, there you go. You're gonna have a mini episode to listen to of our top 3 choices for part 2s of franchises, and then Roger's pick Decoys. I will tell you my pick next week.
Oh my god!
I'm trying to decide between 3 titles, Roger. I'm really struggling, so give me a break.
Well, Troy, honestly, listen. I mean, this is how we know who's fucking listening to our full podcast and who's just bullshitting their way through it and skimming and missing moments. I think you should state your 3 selections on this episode, and if our fans have listened to this episode and they hear this moment, they can give their opinion. They can lend an opinion.
That's a great idea. Here we go. Here are my 3 choices I'm trying to decide between. Okay.
Interactive. We're interactive this week.
First one is the slasher flick from, it was the mid-90s, I believe. It's called Mikey. It has the little kid from Family Ties in it. And he is a killer. He's like, he gets adopted into different homes, and he's like a serial killer. He kills off the families he lives with. So that's one of them I'm trying to decide between. The other one is the one from the 80s. Oh, I don't know. See, I don't have them. It's 1988. It's called Ghost House, directed by Umberto Lenzi. And it has that creepy ass clown doll in it. That's on the cover. And then the third one I'm trying to decide between is really something. This was the one I was leaning towards because it's like unlike anything we've really done, or at least I would pick. But it's the 1990 thriller / drama. It's horror, more of a thriller, starring Cheryl Ladd and Stacey Keenan, called Lisa.
Oh my god, how obscure and unexpected, Troy. I love it. I love that you're getting a little bold with these specialty selections for our patrons, because honestly, that's some good shit. It's diverse. They've got a good title to pick from no matter what. I know which one I'm leaning towards.
Guys, so yeah, if you do listen to us, please chime in on our post when we post this on our Facebook page and say which one you would like us to do. And then I'll reveal which one I pick next week. But sorry, we spent so much time on the Patreon. But seriously, guys, check it out. The link is in the show notes. It's Patreon, Patreon.com, and search for Dark Night of the Podcast. There's 3 tier levels. It just helps us improve the show. You know, it helps us cover some of the cost for doing this podcast in terms of podcast hosting and things like that. So it just will help us grow. We love doing it. So check it out. Check it out. Come join us. We have a blast. The people that have our 7 patrons so far seem to dig it. They love what we're doing. The episodes are pretty much exactly the same as these regular episodes. We don't skimp. I mean, hell, I think one of our Midnight Kissed episode was almost 2 hours long. So we're not skimping. So check it out. Okay, so that's enough about that. But do tell me what movie you would like me to cover on the Patreon for this month. Okay. So, Roger, are you ready to discuss Mountaintop Motel Massacre?
Troy, I've got my $7 in hand, and I'm ready to rent the fucking room.
Okay, folks. Here we go. We're going to dive right in.
The two of us in that goddamn red Beetle just taking off on the hunt for our dreams. We're gonna go get that singing career, Troy.
We're aspiring country singers.
That's us. Oh God!
But I do love that the film starts with the ominous opening score, but there is a picture that's flashed up on the screen of Evelyn that says she was released from the mental hospital on July 13th, 1978. She's in a straitjacket, right? But she's posed very, I think they brought glamour shots in and did this photo with her in her straitjacket because she looks very posed and professional, I thought.
Yeah, the photographer on location that day doing the apparently doing the the personal private sittings for those in the institution really was on their A game. The lighting is great. Her hair is styled perfectly. It gives a time frame. It says she was admitted July 13th, 1978, released January 24th, 1981. So she was in for a few years.
Oh, so because she was okay. So I missed it. I guess I was transfixed by her beautiful pose that I did not.
I get it. Well, on the one, just kind of it fades in at the bottom.
She looks very
end.
angelic with her neck craned and.
Yeah, it's a good angle for her. It's a good angle. But right off the bat, I mean, they're telling you this old broad is not all there. She's not all there. She's got some issues, that Evelyn Chambers. And apparently these issues are enough to drive this woman to be violent enough to kill a guinea pig within the first 4 minutes of the film. I mean, we get a guinea pig slaughter within minutes of this movie just barely getting into the storyline.
So the film opens after the photo and are letting us know that she was just released from a mental institution. She's now in her garden, just doing some pleasant gardening. And we see this cute little white guinea pig. It's so cute. It's making the little squeaking noises that guinea pigs do, and apparently Evelyn is not a fan of guinea pigs because she yells for her daughter, Lori, to come get her critter before she chops its head off because she has a sickle and she's just chopping away in her garden. And this poor little guinea, how to get out of the house in the first place? Doesn't she keep it in a cage?
This beautiful, pristine white guinea pig in the middle of all this soil and soot, just sitting there squealing at her. And let's acknowledge that guinea pigs are probably the single most innocent and non-threatening animal you could possibly present to a person. And this dame is irate. Evelyn is just fucking livid about this guinea pig. Enough again to sickle it. And it's like a whole bloody mess. She really just destroys this thing. She pops it like a zit.
It's so funny because after she yells for her daughter to come out and get it and she's waiting, she's just sitting there glaring at it, giving it dirty look.
Yeah, there's back and forths of growing suspense between her and the guinea pig, just really eyeballing each other.
And we cut to inside and the daughter is inside playing with a rabbit. She's on the bed with her rabbit, oblivious to what's going on outside. And apparently, Evelyn's like, hey, fuck this. Lori, you're taking too long. So she goes over to the guinea pig and she's like, I can't side it and warn you. And she starts hacking the shit out of it with the sickle. And the poor thing is squealing and blood spraying everywhere. It's certainly not a very good first impression of Evelyn.
No, it's horrible. I mean, goddamn. It's not even like it's an unlikable animal. It's a fucking guinea pig. Not saying there's any animals I want to see die in a film, but at least it could be one that's posing a threat, intimidating her, seems like it's going to get into some mischief. Again, this guinea pig is literally I don't see how she'd even see it to begin with because it's still an unwavering. It's just looking at her, eyes trembling, but whatever. So she kills it in rage. And this leads into this whole moment with her daughter, Lori, that I find very interesting. And actually, Troy, I went back and, watched this a second time. And after watching it straight through, I have so many more questions about this opening. I mean, I already had questions to begin with, but you see this whole setup with Lori and she's sitting with her rabbit and she puts a noose around the rabbit. That, it doesn't look like a pleasant leash. It looks like a noose to me. And it's very ominous and suspenseful. And it almost makes me wonder, how much involvement did Lori, the daughter, have in her mother's, progressively more and more unhinged mental state? if that makes sense. Like this whole opening feels very dark. It feels like the girl she goes down into the cellar and it's filled with like livestock, and it's very weird. Like it has a dark like black magic vibe to it. It doesn't look like she's up to anything good. It looks like she's plotting something. And she starts praying to dark forces and her father, and her voice is all like whispered and ominous, and she's praying to her father to like bring her answers about her mother because she's getting sicker again. Answer me. Like she's like getting all like mysterious, and I don't know what they're implying with this sequence, but I almost feel like she's got to be directly involved with the shit that transpires, and her mom just kind of, her mom was already crazy, but she just breaks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a very odd, yeah, odd dynamic, and but you really don't see them spend any time together or have any dialogue together, so you can't gauge what their relationship is. Because yeah, Lori's down there literally doing a seance. She's like, "I summon thee" to her father's picture. "I summon thee," and Evelyn's nosy ass in the meantime has come back inside and gone down in the cellar, and she comes upon this scene. It angers her more than the guinea pig did, because she starts hacking. She's hacking pictures. She's hacking flowers. She's hacking the shit out of everything. And she's like, "I told you never to do this again." All this time, Lori is just sitting in this chair, not saying a word, not moving at all, which I thought was weird. But then Evelyn, like, just goes off and hacks her daughter in the neck with the machete. Or it's a sickle, sorry, not a machete.
Evelyn is giving her best Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface kind of performance here. She's like spinning and twirling with her sickle held high. She's ripping things off walls and cutting shit down. And then she like, I don't want to say accidentally, because like she's a fucking whirlwind, but she basically accidentally kills her daughter. I'm gonna say here, with this as it unfolded, this is what I suspected the story was literally until the movie ended. I thought that what the girl did was like cast a spell with her seance that when her mother killed her, basically caused either like, because her mom's mentally ill, she's unwell, her brain was like weak enough that like either the father's spirit or the daughter's spirit then like possessed her and like took over her body and was like operating as her over a period over the course of this movie. And I still don't know if I'm right or wrong in even thinking that, because all throughout the movie there's moments where you hear like the daughter's voice still present, like mama, mama, like she's whispering to her. There's moments where Evelyn seems like very out of it and very like in a trance almost. And I'm like, bitch is possessed. She's possessed by somebody, but who? Whether or not that's answered or even the case by the end of the film, like I'm not going to say now, but that is what I thought the storyline was setting up to be. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't see that, but I just think that she's just a crazy old bat. Uh, but you could be,
But that's disappointing to me.
you could be right. You could be right. I mean, let's like get the obvious out in the open. Is this film, I think, was definitely giving copying. I don't want to say copying. What's the word I'm looking for? Homaging. We use that word like Psycho and Psycho 2. Psycho 2 had come out around the same time, and there's not a lot of horror films that take place at a motel, right? So I feel like this one was just kind of a sort of a ripoff of Psycho, but instead of using a male Norman Bates, they went with an elderly woman.
It's Psycho without the sun.
It's like, yeah, pretty much. So I just feel like the film is it's kind of a Psycho ripoff. I don't think it goes that deep that she's possessed. Obviously, this broad is crazy from the get-go, and just killing her daughter, I think, drove her over the edge. So that's my impression. Although you could be right. I've never thought of it as like kind of a supernatural or possession type film, just because I didn't get any of those vibes. I feel like when you're hearing the daughter say "mama," that's just she's hearing voices.
Yeah. I have a few little moments that I'm going to bring up over the course of this to kind of just present my theory. And we'll keep
Well,
going.
let's be honest. Evelyn is not the most interesting villain ever to put on screen. There's not a lot to this character, and I think that's another thing that we're going to discuss. Is Evelyn's not intimidating. We really know nothing about her. In a film that's chock full of, I think, interesting characters,
Yeah.
she is by far the least interesting.
Yeah.
She really has no purpose in the film except to kill off the victims. She has no dialogue. She has really no interaction with anybody in the film. It's just an odd choice, and she's not intimidating, so it makes the ending of the film, or like the climax of the film, just kind of fall flat and come off as being like contrived and silly. But we're gonna get there, okay? So she kills her, or she hacks her daughter in the neck accidentally, quote unquote. The police and ambulance show up. They're trying to resuscitate her, and she's kind of in the corner crying, whimpering, "Ooh," watching him. "Ooh." And I want to know, how did this old bat carry this daughter up and put her on the floor?
Oh, I know. Like, she's like, not only did she like completely move the body, which is, illegal, but she also brought her all the way up that like wooden staircase from that cellar, like that little ladder. Like, yeah, I highly doubt it.
Yeah, because there's no way that she left that body down there for the police and ambulance to see that room, because it would poke a hole in her story, right? Because she tells the police and the ambulance, when they ask her what happened, she's like, "Oh, there was an accident in the garden and I don't remember anything." And they just accept it. Although the sheriff guy he seems a little kind of skeptical. He's like peeking around the house. He sees Lori's bedroom with all those. We did not mention these creepy fucking dolls.
Oh yeah, they're all over the fucking place.
Horrific, like just disgusting looking dolls.
The sheriff is a character that I feel you're right, in a cast of very interesting people, because there's a shit ton of intriguing characters in this film. He could have used with a little more development up against some of the other characters who surprisingly do get some. He has a few prominent moments here at the beginning, but he kind of like fades away into the background of the story for a large chunk of the film. And it was, all things considered, how things worked out, I think that they would have done better for themselves to have had him be a little more prominent over the progression of the story.
Because he does seem skeptical, and then it kind of goes nowhere. Because there is a character that has been staying at the hotel for a while, whose name is Reverend Bill, right? This kind of heavy set, drunken reverend who's been staying at the hotel because apparently he was a friend of Evelyn's husband. He chimes in when the sheriff does quite try to question Evelyn further about what happened. He does chime in and be like, he's like, "Don't you think she's in no condition to answer questions? Leave her alone." And the sheriff kind of just like obliges. And that's that. They just take it that this girl had an accident in the garden. She's dead. And that's that, because we cut to the funeral.
Yeah. Over that sequence, I have to point out one little thing, and it was an interesting addition to the moment. And I don't even know if it was intentional, but over the scene between the Reverend and the sheriff, the Reverend being one of the standout actors in the film, by the way, his performance is consistently pretty damn good, I think. There's the sound of this fan just beating in the room, like you can hear the blades like, and it has the sound of almost like this kind of rising heartbeat, and adds this like level of tension to this conversation. It's subtle, but I noticed it, and I noticed even more upon a second viewing. Right off the bat, they do a really good job of pacing this movie in a way that it almost feels like kind of like an unfolding thriller at times. Lots of moments of like kind of just like building tension and suspense. Several like kind of longer conversations. There's scenes that kind of take their time. And I really think like leading up to this funeral, and even the way the funeral was handled, was surprisingly dramatic, well played, and just kind of captivating. Like, I found the opening of this film strangely captivating.
Well, Reverend Bill is the one that's conducting the funeral. The sheriff's there watching on. Evelyn's kind of sitting there just in her own little world, which she is the entire movie. In the meantime, the sheriff goes back to the motel to kind of check things out because, like, again, this guy I think is pretty skeptical of Evelyn's story. So he's going to look back and see if he can find anything, any kind of clues or anything. And this is when we do see like these cabins that are
Dilapidated.
the rooms of this. Oh my god, they are dilapidated. They're falling apart. There's like holes in the roofs. The doors are falling off. The screens are coming off. They're filthy. We do cut back after the funeral. Evelyn's back at her motel. Reverend puts her to bed, and he goes back to his cabin to drink his a big old bottle of whiskey because this Reverend likes to drink.
The whole movie. That's all he does is consume alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is when we get a new character that shows up. Crenshaw.
Robin fucking Crenshaw. Best character in the film.
Well, yeah, I agree. The smartest character in the film. He shows up for a room. It's only $10. She charges him
Isn't it
10.
7? I
No,
thought you said
she
7.
charges him 10. She charges the couple 7.
Oh,
Yeah.
that fucking racist old bitch.
I know, right? That's what I was thinking. Why are you charging the old black man $10, but you charge the couple, 2 people, 7?
Well, he's onto her right from the get-go. I mean, the taxidermy in this place should be enough for any random visitor to approach and say, absolutely fucking not. Like, that alone is foreboding, is all of these just dead animals everywhere. But Evelyn wakes up to Crenshaw after hearing the voice of her daughter say, Mama, Mama, like whispers a few times, and it causes her to wake up, and she comes out of her room into the office in this like weird kind of daze. She's like touching her face a little bit, and her eyes are kind of glazed over. And this was one of the first things that kind of pushed my theory of like, is she kind of like in a trance almost? Like, is this how she naturally is when she's mentally off? Or is there something else at play here? That's kind of one of the things that pushed that belief for me over the course of the movie, was this specific moment. But either way, she's definitely affected by something when she comes out of the room right off the bat.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I just got the impression that her daughter's death really had a major effect on her. She's hearing her daughter's voice, and it's just she's kind of lost all grip of reality. So she gives Crenshaw the room key. He goes out to get his luggage, and he does run into Reverend Bill. So the two of them meet and kind of have a conversation about, nice that someone else is staying in this place with, because I've been the only one here. And Crenshaw's like, yeah, I'm just looking for work. He's a carpenter, just traveling to find work. I'm like, you could start by fixing this fucking place up, first of all.
Oh my God. Yeah. Hire him. Fucking hire him. But Reverend Bill McWiley and goddamn Robin Crenshaw are just delightful together. I mean, give me a buddy comedy with these two gentlemen in the leads. I think they have several scenes together, and I think they're actually just like both pretty capable, well-seasoned actors, like two older men just like shooting the shit and having these conversations. And I like that they kind of took time to develop this kind of like budding friendship between the two of them. It was just an interesting choice, and it kind of lent to you rooting for some of these characters more as the movie progressed.
We do cut to the newlywed couple. There's a newlywed couple that are driving. It's Vernon
and Mary.
And they just got married. And he is hell-bent on taking her to this Mountaintop Motel. That's his destination. He's like, we're going to this motel. I'm going to take you to this motel. I'm like, dude, this is your honeymoon.
Like, come on, man. Like,
are you sure you want to go to this motel?
This girl needs to like step up her standards, because this is by far the seediest, most unappealing hotel I've ever laid eyes on, whether it be in a movie or here in Cleveland, Ohio, because we got some fucking shitty ass motels, and this is by far worse than anything I've ever seen here.
Oh, this is a dump.
It should be
This is
condemned.
this is a travesty that
It's
people
horrible.
actually have to stay in this place.
Let alone even charging them any money to do so. Vernon and Mary, first of all, whose hairstyles combined almost completely derailed the film for me from the get go. As soon as I saw their hair, it's like glaring me in the eye every time I see those fucking combined mullets. But they're endearing, they're likable, and you never get used to that hair though. Like that is some bad hair on both of those people.
Well, they're sweet, they're innocent, they definitely give off that vibe of like young love. They they're just so smitten with each other that they kind of rushed out to get married. I mean, this dude can't even afford a nice hotel to take his new wife to. They have to resort to the $7 a night Mountaintop Motel. They're endearing together. They really are. You like them. You kind of have, like you said, you're getting characters to root for. We do see Evelyn. We do get a scene of Evelyn back at the hotel, back in her quarters of the hotel, playing with this. She has snakes in an aquarium, and she takes one out and
Yeah.
puts it in a
Yeah.
like a bag.
Yeah, the next thing you know, she's fucking manhandling like an asp or something. Like she's just holding it and she puts it in a bag like it's no big deal. Like she seems fine with the fact she's just handling this deadly snake. But I gotta say that this is a scene, and this starts to be a trend for me through the film. The score, though seemingly amateur, at times is extremely effective because the snake, and it's kind of cliche, it has like this rattle sound that accompanies it. And at first I almost felt like, are they implying that this is a rattlesnake? Because I don't think it's a rattlesnake that she's holding, but it's still got like a but it really is just the score kind of building up with this rattle-esque sound that just gives you kind of that creepy. It just goes well with a snake. It may not be the right sound for the specific snake, but it just sounds like what you would expect a snake to sound like. But it's like, in the sense of building score, it's great because it starts swelling and growing over this otherwise very simple scene. It literally is just her putting a snake in a bag and putting the bag on the floor and just like looking at it. And it really, I think, enhances this moment and makes it kind of climax in this way that something is about to happen. Some kind of big shit's about to hit the fan,
Well, and it does. The newlywed couple show up at the hotel, the motel, and she right away is like, "What the hell is this place?" And he's like, "What'd you expect? A Holiday Inn? I can't afford that." How are people finding out about this place?
Yeah, how is it so busy?
Oh my God. I'm like, this place, it's like so off the beaten path. Anyway, so he goes in and he goes into Evelyn and she's like, "Oh, aren't you a pretty one?" This is like the only guy she actually talks to that when he shows up. Everyone else she just ignores and gives him their keys. This is one she tries to actually have a conversation with, though it's very awkward and doesn't really go anywhere, except she does charge him $7. And as he's leaving, she gives him a candle because it's storming out. Of course, it's storming out. It's lightning and raining. So she gives him a candle in case the lights go out. And then she says, "Tell your little wifey I'll have a little something for her."
That alone sounds very foreboding, and I would have questioned that further. This whole moment when she like approaches him and her eyes are large and glassy and like unblinking, and she's just staring at him with this very ominous tone. She says, "Here, in case the lights go out." Like it just, it's so heavy-handed, but he plays it off like, "I reckon they're going to be out either way." But like it's kind of like a little sex joke. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, go get it, boy. And she's so like appalled by all of this. I do want to point out, Troy, very quickly that before this moment, we had a brief introduction to two young women who do become rather prominent over the course of this film.
Oh, I was getting there.
Oh, because these two gals are the belles of this ball, I would say.
Oh, don't get ahead of ourselves, Roger. We're getting there.
Well, we did before the moment where the couple arrives, because there's that whole scene of them driving the truck where he like avoids it.
Yeah, it's super brief.
It's brave, but it's a musical performance.
You already told me how much you love these two dames. You were sending me pictures of them. For our, you were.
Troy and I we're talking about releasing a covers album here in the next couple years, when we're famous. And I was like, Troy, every single one of these songs is going on this cover album. We're learning these harmonies.
As long as I can be prissy.
Oh, Miss Prissy. Prissy and fucking Tanya. These two Southern belles, they're church-going girls. They are out on a mission to find fame and fortune with the powers of their harmonies. They were beautiful singers. And they say it themselves. They say, watch out, Loretta Lynn. And these girls can't sing for shit. Like, these girls, you get like three separate musical numbers where they're just performing, singing together, sometimes for audiences, sometimes alone. And they're so proud of themselves. Like, they're very impressed.
Well, they sure are going to spread their legs pretty quick to get a record deal too, huh?
At least one of them.
At least one.
Miss Prissy.
I'm Prissy. You're the one that wants to spread her legs so you can get a record deal.
I'm Tanya? I'm Tanya. That's about right. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. I'm definitely Tanya.
I'm the one that throws a temper tantrum and storms off into the bathroom.
And completely abandons our friendship for fame and fortune. Yeah, that would be me.
Oh, man. Anyway, so after fucking the newlywed guy goes back out to the car, Evelyn grabs the bag, pulls a trap door open, and hurries down the steps to this tunnel system that is underneath this motel. And okay, so when we say motel, we have to point out that these are separate cabins.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like a connected motel. There's like 4 or 5 separate cabins, but there's a tunnel system that goes from Evelyn's quarters, her house, underneath the ground to all of these cabins. And each cabin has a hidden trap door in the bathroom that she's able to come up through. Very interesting concept, I think.
Yeah.
But she gives them room 2, I think, or whatever it is. And her old ass scurries through this tunnel system to go to that particular cabin to hurry up and open the bathroom trapdoor so she can let this fucking asp loose in their room.
She's sprinting fucking full speed.
And she is, have you seen her? She's smiling.
Oh, she's gloating.
She's grinning.
She's fucking gloating. She's like, oh, ooh, I did it. Like, she's so mischievous, this bitch. I gotta say, Troy, the introduction of this fucking maze system definitely adds a whole other intriguing element to this film. It also just adds to my, not stating my theory is correct, but my confusion. You open up with this big fucking seance, and now you've got a full goddamn maze of murder running between these houses. Like, did fucking Evelyn construct this by herself? Somebody else had to help oversee the construction of this massive, mysterious maze system with hidden doors. Like, somebody else had to help this crazy woman see this vision to fruition. If this is her master plan, there is no way you can convince me that this woman constructed this herself. Like, why is it there? Like,
maybe her husband?
How? Who? Yeah, exactly. But that's what I was saying. Then if the husband was constructed murder mazes under these fucking motels, the motels themselves look like porta potties. They're so small. If he oversaw the construction and execution of this maze system underneath his motel, don't you think he had something dark and mysterious he was hiding as well? Like, I'm very confused as to how this maze system became a thing to begin with.
Maybe it just came with the place when they bought it, Roger.
Oh, that's okay. I can buy it. I do have to say another thing. This is quite a compliment because I love this film. God, do you see the inspiration that the movie Vacancy took from this film?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Vacancy basically refined the idea into something far more terrifying. And, like, built off of it. But this sets the groundwork, both literally and figuratively, because it's the same fucking maze. It sets the groundwork for what I think became the story for Vacancy. I love the maze aspect of it. I would have liked it to have been sewn into the story a little bit more, because people certainly don't seem to question it when they find it.
Well, yeah. So she puts the snake in the room just as the couple enters the room. Right. And this room, God, I know we're going to harp on this a lot, but this room is fucking disgusting. The carpet is peeling off the floor. The wallpaper is all crusty. I would immediately leave and sleep in my car.
Imagine being that bride who's like, I'm on my honeymoon. My husband's taking me to a rural motel where there's going to be trees surrounding the fireplace, and the chimney is going to be made out of bricks. It's going to be beautiful. And then they arrive up at that shit hole. Literally, it's like a small shit hole. That's all it is in a bed. They arrive. Imagine how pissed that woman must be, acknowledging that this is her honeymoon.
Well, she's trying to be positive about it because he's like, don't say anything. And she's like, I know. I was told if I can't say anything nice to not say anything at all. And then she's like, what the hell's that over there, Vernon? There is a fucking sack. The burlap sack that fucking Evelyn threw in their room that had the snake in it. It's just laying right there in the middle of the floor.
How does Mary not realize that there's a snake in this bag?
I don't know.
What else would it be?
He tells her, just throw it in the corner. I'm like, no, you go and you ask for another room because obviously
Here's my thing. Troy, snakes are living, and they're living animals. They move, they writhe. And when she picks up that bag, it's not just dead weight. Like, there's a massive snake in that bag.
Oh my God, Roger, I would have. Okay, I remember checking into a motel and there was a candy wrapper left on the nightstand, and I went down to get another room. I'm certainly not going to stay in a room where there's a big fucking burlap sack thing.
Just a mystery sack, just like this mystery sack. And I do want to also acknowledge that, like, over the course of the scene unfolding, Evelyn kind of pops back up in her little like nook hole, like looking through the door of the bathroom floor, and she's just like fucking. So she's pleased as fucking punch. The joy she takes out of this snake being in this room, it's palpable. She is chuckling and chortling, and I love her. I love Evelyn. In these moments, she steals the show.
Okay, so she throws it in the corner. They get on with their night. We do cut to Reverend and Crenshaw are together in the Reverend's room talking about basically him being a pastor. And he just, he likes to spread the word of God. And Crenshaw starts to like chide him because he's drinking. He's like, does the word of God involve drinking?
Yeah, but you get like this unusually kind of deep conversation. And between like two grown men, just like kind of being buddies and like relaxing, chatting, and they start kind of getting kind of deep with the material, like talking about like the differences between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of hell. And it was just like an interesting choice. But again, like, especially this being early 80s, you've got this older obese white man, and you've got this older African-American gentleman, and they seem to be in these like this really comfortable place where they could just sit there and talk about life. And I find it almost charming, and really reflected nicely on the era for me, seeing two characters like this just have like a very natural moment together. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that?
Yeah. No, it does. I feel like their relationship and their dialogue is handled very well. I like the fact that neither one of them really are caricatures. I mean, they could be, because you have, the drunken pastor who could very much become a larger than life caricature. And then you have, Crenshaw, who could definitely become a character. This was early 80s. You weren't seeing a lot of African Americans in slasher films. And if you did, they were comic relief or they're just to be killed off. This Crenshaw character, actually, as we mentioned, is one of the more substantial, well-written characters of the film.
This character was my takeaway from the film, the strongest element in the sense of just how he was written into the story. Like, he's lower class, he's poor, he says he's gone through some hard times, but he's by far the most like intelligent and capable, and as soon as shit hits the fan, he's unfazed. I think that's my favorite part about this character. What's most realistic to me, I think you're absolutely right in saying that not that these characters, at least specifically these characters, are not caricatures. Is in like the face of like this pretty unhinged event that's going on around him. This character is like, keep it fucking cool. Keep it cool. Let's figure out what we're going to do. We're going to take care of it, and we're going to get the situation under control. I think that he's just very likable, and we talk about characters who have things that kind of unjust things happen to them over the course of films. I would throw this character into the ring as well, just because he is the reason that they make any progress whatsoever.
Yeah, if he would have just stuck to his guns and not listened to outside people, he would have made it. And that's what kind of pisses me off. We do now get introduced to after this conversation between Crenshaw and Reverend Bill, they call it a night. We do now get introduced to Al, who is driving, and Al has a car phone. And this is 1983, which, hey, good for Al. His secretary calls him, and he asks her to find him the closest motel because he doesn't think he's not going to be able to drive all through the night to get to his destination because he's tired. So she she tells him, let me get the motel brochure or whatever thing. And she tells him, oh, well, it looks like there's a Mountaintop Motel 12 miles ahead. He's like, okay, great. In the meantime, we cut to Prissy and Tanya are now broken down on the side of the road. They were just singing in their Beatle a few minutes ago, but now it broke down and they're on the side of the road in the pouring rain. And who happens to come along? Al.
Let me acknowledge that and I think the most striking aspect of these characters, aside from their vocal prowess, and Troy, I'm sure you'll hear me on this, is that they chose to put both of these poor girls in matching white t-shirts. And like, of course this fucking asshole is going to pull over when he sees these fucking girls' headlights just full nipples, like just piercing through these so sopping wet white t-shirts. And the thing so intriguing about these characters is they're so goddamn naive, especially the one that like they aren't even thinking about the fact that their boobies are showing through their shirts. They're just like, oh, thank God, someone's picking us up. Like this mysterious man who does in fact prove to be a fucking liar and a manipulator he sees these boobies poking through his window. He absolutely is going to pick them up.
Yeah, but they're charming. They're charming. The characters are charming. Like I said, this is one of the few, I don't want to say one of the few, but this is a slasher film where I feel like the characters are pretty likable. They're not annoying. They seem real. And it's little things like the naivete of Prissy and Tanya that kind of very much ring true. Like these would be two naive small town girls who think they're going to make it big, are definitely overestimating their own talent because everyone in their family has probably told them how great of singers they are because they come from a town that has 50 people in it. But they're not annoying. They seem real. And that's one of the things about this movie that I have to say is a highlight for me is the characters are pretty solid, well written, realistic. You sympathize with them. You when they get in the car with Al, you as the viewer know right away he is skeezy, right? And you don't want to see these two girls taken advantage of. So every time they buy his bullshit, at least me as a viewer is like, oh come on, it's really be smart. You know, you just want to hop in the screen and be like, be smart. Because what ends up happening is they get in the car and right away Tanya sees his car phone and she's like, oh my God, you have a car phone. You must be rich. And he proceeds to tell them that he pretty much owns Columbia Records.
Oh, and they lose their fucking minds.
They lose their fucking minds. He's on a talent search. He's driving from city to city. He just left Little Rock and he's on a talent search. And they are just fucking ecstatic. They're like, oh my God, what are the odds? We sing too.
And he's just like, of course you do. Like this fucker is such a shitty human being. He's just sitting there with this shit-eating grin across his face.
Oh, because he knows the minute they got excited when he told them that he owned Columbia Records that he was going to get some pussy. Let's be honest. That's all this guy wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll say in regards to one of these girls, like at least one of them is kind of savvy. The other one, fucking Tanya, man, we're gonna get to her, but just listeners, remember that name, Tanya. I got some issues with Tanya, and we're gonna be voicing them up here very shortly. So stay tuned. Um, Meanwhile, Vernon is now so horny he can't
Ugh.
stand it.
Oh, I love it. I have that written down. He is so horny he can hardly stand it. Wearing his saggy diaper looking bike boxer
These are these are rural people. They've got mullets and they've got mustaches that match their facial skin color. Like, come on, Troy. Come on. But and I can't imagine a more enticing and exciting build up to a sexual experience than one vixen that is Mary, who's now donning a very
I was gonna
frumpy
this,
negligee. Like, if this woman is
did
this
she
supposed
get
to
this
be
from
like,
Mother Superior and Silent Night, Deadly Night? This is the
oh my
ugliest thing. It shows
god,
no skin.
it's like a bed sheet.
And
She's wrapped in a bed sheet.
she's trying to be flirty. He's like, "What's taking you so long?" And she's like, "I got to get ready." He's like, "Ooh, ready for what are you getting ready?" He's like, "I'm going to show you. You leave it to me." I'm like, "Ugh."
Oh
And she's like,
boy.
"Hold." She's like, she says, "Hold your horses." He's like, "It's not my horse that's bothering me."
No, and as he says that, and what I will say is a pretty well executed sequence, he flips over onto his side and comes eye to eye with that goddamn mysterious snake that was slithering around in the background.
It's now on the nightstand.
Yeah, just there, and it fucking strikes him in the
It
cheek.
it bites him in the fucking cheek, and this snake is huge. This
Yeah,
fucking thing looks like a
massive.
python.
How did she not know it was a snake earlier in that goddamn bag? What else could it be?
Okay, this fucking snake is huge. How does he kill it with 2 hits of a shoe?
I don't know. I mean, this poor guy. We don't even really get any closure with this character. No, we do. We do. Never mind. Because he's just. Let's be clear, guys. Moving forward, this character is bedridden. Like,
With his face getting saggier and saggier throughout the film.
oh my god! If you're gonna watch this movie for one reason, watch it for his ever evolving snake bite on his face. Throughout the whole course of the movie, it just keeps growing. Like, I'm shocked it didn't consume his whole body.
It's the worst makeup effect I've ever seen in my life. It literally looks like they went to Party City, bought some scar ointment or whatever scar makeup, and just slapped it on his cheek, and then just kept adding more and more of it. So by the time it gets to the end of the movie, it's just like a big glob of makeup stuck to his cheek.
Yeah, I feel like they just kept adding to it. Like, every shot, they'd be like, add some more on. But I mean, again, here we go. This is just more proof that bad makeup can make or break a goddamn movie. Because I will say that the execution leading up to the snake bite was actually quite unsettling. Like, you see the snake moving across the counter, he doesn't see it at all. The actual strike of the snake is pretty well cut, well executed. And then, like, after that, it looks like someone took a pencil and drew 2 circles on his cheek and put a little fake blood on it. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, if you would have given me a better effect, you would have had me. You would have had me for this whole snake bite side story.
Well, yeah. Well, he gets bit, and she tries to call for help, and of course, the phone line is dead. So we cut back to Al, Prissy, and Tanya, who are on their way now to stay at the Mountaintop Motel. And he basically tells them, because it's raining, he's like, "You guys can stay with me." And they're all excited. At least Tanya is. Prissy's a little like, eh. They pull up to the motel. He goes in to get a room. Evelyn comes out, and she doesn't say anything to him. She doesn't say a word to him. She doesn't even tell him how much the room is. She just like gives him a key. He's like trying to talk to her, and even as he's leaving, he's like, "Ma'am, you have a spider web in your hair." And he tries to take it, get it out of her hair for her. She like backs away.
I loved that little interaction right there with the whole spider web. Like she bats it out. She bats his hand away from her, and he instantly is like, "All right, well, thank you." Like, he completely is like, "I'm getting the fuck out of here." And Al's character, it's difficult because he's doing something really shitty to those girls. So I lean towards not wanting to like him, but a lot of his interactions and like his willingness also to jump in later in the game and be part of the solution makes me want to like him. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. He is doing something shitty. I mean, I think he sort of a little bit redeems himself later, and we'll get to it. But he still is kind of charming. You know, he's skeezy, but he's not played that way. Does that make any sense at all? Like
Oh no,
he's very
absolutely.
charming. He's very likable. Like he's not like he's rubbing his fingers and being like, "Haha, I'm getting some pussy." No, he's being very charming, and it seems like he generally does sort of care about these girls and their well being, even though he is sort of trying to take advantage, or he is taking advantage of them, or he's going. That's his plan, right?
Well, I think it's important that this character be played charming because that's part of the reason these naive girls fall for him so quickly. So I think that it really shows the actor also doing a good job with this performance because he's also able to charm us through this shitty kind of plot that he's been developing with the girls to, to sleep with them. As soon as things get to be severe, he tosses that aside and he does step up to the plate. So yeah, I just think it really reflects on the actor doing a pretty good job of playing this kind of sleazy character that also kind of has a heart.
So on the way back to his car, he runs into Mary, who's frantic and tells him she needs help because her boyfriend was bit by a snake. And he says he will use his car phone to call for help. So she goes back into the room. He goes to their cabin and tells the girls to go on in, and he's going to call for help. And he does. He calls the police station. Someone answers, and they're trying to get through to the sheriff, but the sheriff is at the bar, the local bar, leaving his fucking walkie-talkie out in his car, so he doesn't get the call.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the girls are huddled around a fucking candle.
This was weird though because the sheriff is in that bar drinking, and he's like the bartender, that blonde Dolly Parton looking bartender. She's like, "Give me my cup back now." I didn't understand what was he harassing her? What was
I honestly have no fucking idea. Like they never revisit, and that's not even. Is it the same? Is it a different? Is it the same sheriff as the one that becomes the predominant character?
Yeah, it's the
Through the
same
whole,
sheriff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's so weird because it's so like removed from the rest of his storyline. Like throughout most of the film, he's very invested in finding out what the mystery is going on behind the murder of that girl of Lori. And then you cut to that bar moment and it seems just so detached from everything else his character kind of is about that it felt very dislocated. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it was just their way of putting him in a way where he could not answer the call.
Yeah.
So they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, let's just throw him in a bar." I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't mesh well with the rest of the film and with his storyline, I don't think. But yeah, the girls are in the motel room, huddled around a candle. When Al comes back in and he says, "I have some clothes for you," he gives them some clothes to change into.
Of course, it's like a men's t-shirt, so like barely covering anything, and her vagina is pretty much just revealed.
It's a men's t-shirt and then a button-up dress shirt that the other one has on. Again, doesn't cover anything, so everything's hanging out. But they're thankful. They're thankful.
They're very
Um,
polite young women.
they are very polite young women. Like they're small town Arkansas girls. They're polite. They were raised right. The poor Reverend. He's just trying to sleep. And Evelyn now is up to her old shenanigans because she opens his trap door to let a bag. Where the fuck is she getting a bag full of rats into his room? And I'm not talking like one or two rats, Roger. This is like 20 rats. Because what they do is they climb up on his bed and they're crawling all over him. They're crawling all over the bedstand.
One thing I find very intriguing about this decision here is there's like this turn where Evelyn is. It doesn't seem like she's doing things to kill so much as just to like greatly inconvenience the people staying at the motel. Like she unleashes these rats. These rats, it's not like she like put peanut butter on the Reverend and they're going to eat through his skin or something. They're just loose, big fat rats just waddling around. Of course, the Reverend wakes up and he flips his shit, and then his solution is to drink more because that's
Well, he bats a few of them off the bed with his Bible. He's like, these fucking rats. Where on God's green earth did these rats come from?
so it's weird because this starts a brief trend where she's really just doing things that are just annoying.
It seems like she's a jokester at first. Like she's playing pranks and she's just getting a big old kick out of it. But then something does happen that kind of switches the switch. But yeah, it's odd. It's odd that she starts with snakes, rats, roaches, and then progresses to horrifically murdering. It's quite the progression, right? Back in the room with Al makes them a drink, some bourbon, right? Or scotch, one of the two. This is when Chrissy does kind of express that she is a little bit skeptical because he's like, I can make you guys stars. Uh, and he just keeps going on and on about how he's worked with Barbara Mandrell and all the famous Nashville, singers, and he's recorded with them in the studios. And Chrissy is starting to get a little bit prissy, not Chrissy, prissy. It's starting to
Definitely not. It's definitely
it's
prissy.
prissy. I know it's prissy. She's getting a little skeptical. Evelyn goes back to her house and she's hearing Lori's voice again saying, Mama, Mama. And she goes to get a doll and like awkwardly carrying around this like hideous plastic doll.
Well, I was gonna say, if you look at this doll, it's so strange because whoever did the doll's makeup is clearly a drag queen. I mean, the eyebrows, the lips, but then like if you look, because she's shadowed, but as she steps into the light, you realize that Evelyn's makeup is like really exaggerated and like matches the dolls. It's strange. Like it doesn't I don't even understand exactly like what it represents, but yeah, like her makeup is like really exaggerated with like big lips and all this eyeshadow.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was wondering because it's only in this scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rest of the film, it's gone. Like she's not wearing the makeup anymore. But it is this one scene with this drag queen eyeliner on, and she gets some roaches out of an aquarium. So she has snakes in aquariums, she has roaches in aquariums, she has rats in aquariums, but she gets a bunch of roaches. And now with her drag queen eyeliner, she goes back down into her little tunnel system and goes up into Crenshaw's room.
All throughout the course of this, I want to really quick announce or acknowledge that the score here, Troy, and I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. The score is just super, super reminiscent of that era in general. But they do these little mysterious chimes every time something is suspicious or building in intensity. You hear this like little like diddling kind of chime musical cue. It stands out to me as being one of those kind of key score flares that was really prominent in the early to mid 1980s films of this genre. I appreciate it. I'm saying it's a good thing. I just want to acknowledge that it feels so of that era.
It does. It's very 80s, very 80s. So she lets the roaches loose in Crenshaw's room and they immediately swarm all over him. This poor guy just trying to sleep, and he wakes up with covered in roaches. He wakes up, he's like, oh my God, roaches. I'm getting the hell out of here.
I love how calm he is, though. Like, I mean, if I woke up and there was that many roaches all over me, I'd leap from the bed screaming. He's just somewhat put off by it and starts talking about how or how they ought to call the place a roach motel. That's his little side comment. But overall, he's just like, oh, there's roaches all over me. And he's like batting them off, and he eventually gets out of his bed. But he's like covered in roaches. I don't understand how he's so calm in this situation. But he proves to be calm in all situations, so it ends up being just a trait of this character, you know?
Oh, I'd get the hell out of there. Yeah, he's very calm, trying to crack little one-liners. Yeah, his comment about, look, they should just call this the Roach Motel. Back in Al's room, the girls are now auditioning for him by singing a duet together. All I could say is bless their hearts. They're trying. He's playing along pretty well. I mean, he tells them when they're done that they need a little polishing, but he can definitely see them recording an album in Nashville.
The whole time on his face, he looks so fucking like cocky and like sly, and he basically looks like in his eyes, you girls sure sound good, but you'll sound way better with my dick in your mouths. Is what he that's exactly how he looks. Like, once you're sucking my dick, this song is gonna sound 10 times better. So yeah, you can totally read what this fucker is up to.
Oh yeah, he's trying not to laugh, but yeah, he does have this cocky look on his face. This is when Evelyn, back in her house, she starts hearing Laurie's voice. And it takes a very dark turn because now Laurie's voice is telling her that she must kill all of the people at the hotel because they know she's crazy and they're going to send her back to the hospital. And this is what basically, I guess, sets her off on her murderous rampage, is her daughter's voice speaking to her.
If this is all they're really going to give me in the sense of like Evelyn's like deteriorating mental state,
it is all they give us, though.
yeah, and I think I was trying to find more of an explanation because, again, as you said earlier, you've got some really well written characters. Overall, like, the progression of the storyline is interesting. It's very different from other films in the setup. You know, like, there's a reason each one of these unique individual groups of people is in this motel, staying at this motel. They don't even know what's coming in any way. It's intriguing. I want to pay attention to this film. And it keeps my attention all throughout. But for the explanation to merely be like, oh, Evelyn is crazy. And when she's crazy, she kills people. Like, I want it to be more. I want there to be some more meaning to it, something deeper. But I think you're probably right.
I think it just goes back to, Roger, that the villain in this film is the least developed character of them all. I said that at the beginning, and it's just something I'm going to keep harping on or keep mentioning because it is a fact. It's a fact that this Evelyn, who is supposed to be the villain, who is the villain, she's the villain. We really get nothing about her. I mean, her whole purpose in this film is to kill. You know, I think that's a detriment a little bit to the film. I would have liked to have had a little bit more personality from her, a little bit more in her of interacting with the guests at the motel to kind of get a better idea of her personality and what's like driving her, but we don't get anything. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I think the actress is fairly good in what she's given to do, which isn't a lot. And I just would have liked to have seen more, from her. We do get a quick scene of the sheriff. He must have saw that he has a missed call because he calls back to the station and says, hey, you know what? I got your message, but I couldn't get through to the motel. So I'm going to drive out there to check it out myself. So it kind of sets into motion a purpose for the sheriff arriving at the hotel. Now we do get back in Al's room. The girls are singing him another song. This is when he's like telling them, guys, you're going to have a hit album. And Tanya gets really excited and hops into bed with him. He's in his underwear. She hops into bed with him and he's like, hey, do you want this to be a solo? And to Chrissy, and she storms off into the bathroom immediately. And him and Tanya start making out, but Tanya gets kind of upset and is like, you know what? I better go check on Prissy. So she goes into the bathroom. And this is when Prissy's like, you know what? That Al's a phony and you're hopping into bed with this phony. And they kind of have this argument back and forth. And Tanya's like, I'm not missing this opportunity. What if he's not a phony? I'm like, oh, girl.
Overall, this whole moment between these girls, they really kind of define, in my mind, the girl you want to root for and the girl that you're like, get the fuck out of here, you're a bitch. I know who I want to die after this point. And unfortunately, it chooses to give me the opposite of what I require from this film. So that's disappointing because Miss Prissy ain't taking no bullshit from this guy. Miss Prissy finally, she locks herself in the bathroom. She's like, fuck it. I don't want to be sleeping with anyone to get to the top. And that causes one Tanya to completely like toss Miss Prissy, her cousin, Miss Prissy. She tosses her aside and she's like, basically like, fuck you. I'll do anything for fame, even if it means leaving you behind in my dust.
I'm going to get some dick, so have fun in the bathroom. And that's exactly what she does. She goes right back out in the bed to make out with Al. And in the bathroom, poor Prissy is, fixing her hair. All of a sudden, we see Evelyn come up through the floor, kind of slowly looming over Prissy. And all of a sudden, Prissy kind of senses that somebody's behind her. She turns around, and Evelyn hacks poor Prissy in the face with the sickle.
Oh, the stab to Prissy's face is so awkward, Troy. It's awkward to say the least. I mean, the action, the cut, the physical, actual cut on her face as well, but like also the cut swinging down on her. It just doesn't quite land. The only thing about this kill, this moment that kind of got me was after the fact. Evelyn like looks at the body and then she pokes her to make sure she's dead, and I chuckled a bit, but like again, if we're going to talk about bad makeup effects, this is not a good one. This is not a good makeup effect.
No, it's not. It's not. It's like it literally. They just put some. It's so lazy. It just looks like they took like I said, a glob of like makeup and just splashed it on her face with some blood on it.
Well, and like they don't even blend the skin colors, and that really shows up in the transfer that I watched. Like the differentiation in skin tone between the seam of the makeup, like it's very obvious, and it really like just takes away from some of these fairly well executed moments. But yeah, so now Miss Prissy's dead. I'm fucking pissed because that means you know who is going to take the reins as like basically the female lead, goddamn Tanya, who is incompetent. Let's put that out there right now. As the movie goes on, the rest of this movie, if there's one goddamn weak link, it's fucking Tanya. She can't do shit. She's not capable of doing anything. She just sits there and she screams dramatically for the rest of the film.
Yeah, she's worthless. But she does want to check on Prissy again. And Al's like, no, I'll do it. So he gets up and she's like, well, I'm coming with you. It's like, bitch, it's the door's right there. You don't need to get up out of bed. You can literally see. So he goes and opens.
This room is the size of a pillbox.
He opens the door and immediately they see the blood, but no Prissy. And of course, Tanya starts screaming. Yeah,
that's blood.
Yeah.
Her southern drawl is so prominent with some of these lines. That's blood.
And Al's like, I'm gonna go get help. You stay here, despite Tanya being like, "Don't leave me, don't leave me." He's like, "Stay in here, bitch." It's like somebody just disappeared from the room. Obviously, there's a way for someone to get in and out, and you're gonna leave this poor girl, who's obviously not in the best mental state. You're just leaving her there. Okay, whatever.
Well, and also, like, out of all the people to kind of, for me as the viewer at this point, with this whole situation that's transpiring, Al kind of, like, steps up to the plate and, like, takes charge a bit. And, like, out of all the people that we've been introduced to thus far, we get Porn Stash Al as, like, the male lead, I guess. It's the man who moments ago like lied to these two innocent young women to coerce them to have sex. Now this is the moment where everything turns and he kind of takes the bull by the horns. And it is an awkward transition going from like kind of despising him to now having to be like, okay, this guy might get some shit done after all. But yeah, it's awkward. It was an awkward turn in events for me, you know?
Yeah, outside Al runs into Crenshaw. And he's like, I'm gonna go warn the newlyweds. There's a girl missing. So they go into their room to the newlywed Vernon and Mary's room to tell her that a girl's missing and they need to be aware of their surroundings. And the poor Vernon's still on the bed with his face slowly like melting off.
That snake bite is looking severe at this point. It is looking severe.
Oh, it's his whole cheek now is just like this big glob of shit, and it's all miscolored. And he's just bedridden, like he can't get up and do anything.
He can't even talk, like because Al's like, "How are you doing?" And he's like he's dying. This man is dying.
They go next door to warn the Reverend now about the situation, and the Reverend's like, "Okay, I'll get out there and help." And the minute they leave, literally, like the minute they leave, the Reverend turns around and Evelyn comes out of his bathroom. And he's like, Evelyn. He's like, Evelyn, what are you doing here? She comes up and hacks him in the chest with her sickle. And this is a awkward kill too, because the angle that you see her hit him in the chest with is not the angle that the sickle is sticking out of when he turns around.
Oh, we definitely acknowledged that the first watch when we saw it. Like we were like, "Oh, that was like awkwardly edited." And what makes it even worse is like she steps out of the shadows and she's like, "Away, Satan!"
Yeah, wait.
And it's like this. There's like this double beat. It's not even like a beat. It's like an elongated pause before she jabs the sickle into into his gut, basically. And like there is so much time for this man to respond or react or do something, and it's just like very awkwardly paced.
Yeah, it's some of the editing in this film, particularly towards the end, is very messy, very sloppy.
Yeah.
And this is one particular scene where I think the editing is definitely sloppy. It could have been tightened up quite a bit and it wouldn't have looked so awkward and ridiculous. So Al goes back to the hysterical Tanya, who's in just the room on the bed just crying. She really becomes, you're right, she becomes worthless. However, I do have to give him some kudos because he does tell her, he admits that he's not the record executive, that he's just an advertising agent.
Yeah, I think they needed to do that. I think that was the right call to have him have some remorse for what he had done.
Yes. Well, she freaks out and she's like, Prissy was right. You're just a fucking phony. And he calms her down. And Crenshaw, back in his room, I love this old man. He is over this shit. He is packing his shit up. He's like, I'll sleep in the truck if I have to. He's just like, I'm getting out of here.
Crenshaw is sensible. He's sensible.
He wants to get the fuck out of there. He's like, I'm over this. People have rats. They have snakes. I'm getting out of here. But he goes to use the bathroom first. And as he's on the toilet, he sees the trapdoor opening.
Yeah, we see the whole process of him like sitting down on the pot. Like I literally thought I was going to watch this old guy take a shit. I was getting ready for it. Like sound effects and everything, but we don't get the sound effects. Thank fucking God.
No, we don't. But he does grab his toolbox and nail the trapdoor shut as soon as he can.
Oh my God. As soon as he did that, I was like, fuck yes. Like this guy is going to give me what I need from this character.
Yeah. And so what he does is he basically goes to all the rooms to tell them, hey, I know how this guy's getting, or how this person's getting in. So he goes into Al and Tanya's room and he nails their trapdoor shut.
Crenshaw, like the moment shit hits the fan, he is so like, I said this earlier, but like cool under pressure. He immediately develops a plan. Like we've got to give this guy some credit. Right off the bat, he develops a correct suspicion of who the killer is. Because Al says, who do you think's doing this? He says, I think it's the old woman. So he develops a theory of who the killer is. He calmly begins to nail all of the doors shut in these trapdoors so they can't get through. And he basically is like, let's formulate a plan. We got to get through and figure out what we're going to do next. Like, let's get the ball rolling because people are dying for a reason. Everything that's happening here is because of this one person. He's the one that really, honestly, gets the ball rolling with them formulating a plan.
Yes, and he gets it into motion. Him and Al actually go to Evelyn's house and start to search it. And they find all the weird dolls and shit. In Laurie's room, they're exploring, and it's very obvious that something is not right with Evelyn now that they're finding all this shit. And he does find her trap door that leads to the tunnel, and in a very smart manner, he nails that shut too.
Yeah, he's like, we can't let her get back in here. So fuck yeah.
Al's like, we have to go after her. And Crenshaw's like, no, we don't. Why do we have to go? He's like, just let the law deal with it. I'm not going to be killed by some crazy white woman. And Al's like, we have to get her before she gets us. I'm like, what the fuck? You just locked her in. You just nailed her in. She's not coming after you. And second of all, this is a elderly woman.
Old. I mean, this woman is old. If I were these fuckers, I would have taken a Molotov cocktail, thrown it in there, nailed it shut, and just let her fucking cooked. Like, don't get your hands dirty with this broad. Don't go in after her.
But why is Al so afraid of her coming after them? Hey, you know what? Get in the room. There's how many of you? There's there's 5 of you left. You know, all you have to do is get in one room, and when the old bitch comes up through the floor, bash her in the head. Like, this is not a supervillain. This isn't somebody. It's an elderly woman, and Al is acting like we have to go after her. We have to get her before she gets us.
Yeah, it definitely is an underdeveloped reasoning for why they eventually decide to go in.
All they had to have done is, like I said, get into one room and wait for her old bitch to come up or nail her in. She's not getting out. Wait for the police to show. But Al insists.
And Crenshaw does protest. Like, again, I want to acknowledge you said this, but like, if they would have listened to him, that's exactly what would have happened.
He should have just listened, because what ends up happening is they go to the newlywed room. They show Mary the hidden door in the bathroom. They put something over it so that it can't be opened. And they leave to tell her, please lock the door behind you. And as they leave, fucking Evelyn has already come up through the floorboards and was hiding in the bathroom, because she comes up behind Mary. And as Mary turns around, Evelyn hacks her with the sickle.
Ugh.
And then there is a scene where she hacks her again, and the sickle supposedly goes through her cheeks and comes out.
Oh my God, it looks so bad.
It is the worst effect I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And again, this is a sequence that up until the actual visual of the gore, the pacing is actually well played. She emerges from the shadows with that fucking like glazed over look on her face, and Mary turns around just as the fucking sickle comes down. He wakes up seeing it happen, but he's so sick he can't do anything, so she ends up slicing his throat. The whole scene as a scene is actually quite effective. The gore is so bad that it drops like 5 notches just because it looks so fucking cheesy and shitty. If they would have had a good makeup artist, this would be a very effective sequence. Of course she's already in the room. Like, I can't think of anything scarier, you know?
Yeah, she's in the room. She kills Mary. She kills Vernon, not before telling him, well, don't you look lovely? And cuts his throat. Again, awkward. It's an awkward kill. Crenshaw and Al hear the screams and break back into the room and see the dead body. And this is when they like decide to go down after her. And the plan is Crenshaw's going to go down through the newlywed room. Al's going to go down through another room, and they're going to meet in the middle, because they feel like Al feels like they'll run into her. If one's at one end, one's the other end, and they're coming to meet, they're going to run into her. And poor Crenshaw agrees to do this.
God damn it. God damn it, Crenshaw. You've been so fucking sensible. Troy, one thing I do want to acknowledge that we it's so brief overall, but we did miss that this is a key event that happened. As all of this has been transpiring, the sheriff did arrive, but found out that the path is now blocked by a fallen tree. Because earlier in the film, as Al was arriving with the girls, we saw this rather elaborate lightning bolt strike that looks too big budget to have been pulled off in this film, but somehow they did it, where one of the tree branches falls over the road behind them. And so now when the sheriff has arrived, the road is completely blocked off, so he has to walk the rest of the way up to the motel.
Yeah. So he's on his way. Al goes back into their room, and he tells Tanya to get the hell out. Take his keys. If he's not back in 5 minutes, she's to take off. Drive away from there. So she takes his keys and she goes out to the car, runs and locks herself in the car. We cut to Crenshaw is down in the tunnels with he's carrying a hammer for protection, and he's just walking through the tunnels, exploring, and he's finally gets to the point where he's like, Al, you should be here by now. And he drops his hammer. And as he reaches down to pick the hammer up, fucking Evelyn comes out of nowhere and cuts his hand off with the sickle, and then cuts him in the throat with it.
Oh my God, I was so fucking mad at this. Like, losing Crenshaw was a blow for me.
Well, plus the fact that it happened so quickly too.
Yeah.
Like there was no like build up. It just out of nowhere he's killed.
Yeah, it's more meant to be a shock, I think, but it does feel like for that character, it feels like he deserved more, because he was so pivotal in basically them getting a grasp on the situation, you know?
Yeah, but he was so sensible. Like he was about ready to go. Like he should have just left.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge very quickly that before Al left Tanya behind, he did make the bold decision to kiss her on the lips. To me, I am now confused. Like, are they like lovers now? Like after he after he tried to like fuck her over to fuck her. Are they now like romantically entangled? I'm very confused by that decision. That seems like that's poorly thought out on Tanya's part,
It seems
for sure.
no, it seems yeah. That's no. I feel like they're going to end up together. She's forgiven him,
But
and
I do want to acknowledge that the way this whole thing builds up, man, and you mentioned this earlier, in the sense of like once you get down into the cellar, or not the cellar, but the maze, that leads down from all of these rooms, unusually suspenseful, all things considered. When you think of what the story is, it's about a petite elderly woman who's going around creepily killing people and playing pranks on them. When you watch this unfolding and you think about what the storyline is and the fact that it's still able to feel suspenseful, it's still able to feel tense, this basement cellar layer, it's all shadows and darkness, and between that and cutting between that and the Tanya in the car like screaming for Al as the rain is beating down, it actually manages to swell and build into what is, I think, a rather intense finale, all things considered.
yeah, it's pretty intense. It goes by pretty quickly. It happens all pretty quickly, and
Yeah,
the editing in a certain scene is very sloppy.
it is. Yeah.
So the sheriff shows up and he sees Tanya in the car and tells her to open the door. She comes out and freaks out, and she takes him in the room and shows him the trap door and is like, everyone's dead. She's killed everybody. So the sheriff, goes down into the tunnels himself to look for Evelyn. And it is kind of I don't want to say it's drawn out. It happens pretty quickly, but there is, a pretty lengthy scene of him just walking through this tunnel, like taking everything in. And we do see how like elaborate this thing is and how it has all these different corridors that lead up to the different cabins and stuff. And as he turns one of the corners, he does find the dead bodies of Prissy and the Reverend.
Again, the makeup is really not doing any favors, especially the dead face makeup. It's so like cartoony.
It's just the white makeup with some green tint to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very confused as to why they opted to give Tanya so many big moments, because she has them with Al, and now with the sheriff, she's got this big dramatic breakdown moment. Like the girl, like she's not awful, but she can't totally carry it. It's just so emotional. Her reactions are always very huge, like
And
to everything.
she doesn't really do anything.
No, she adds nothing to the greater good of the movie. She's a very weak
Yeah,
female.
she doesn't have a moment where she's fighting back or doing anything. It's just her she's playing the hysterical girl throughout the whole film.
But I do want to say, Troy, that like once the sheriff arrives, and this is one thing about the ending I want to appreciate. You're right. Not a lot happens, and I think they knew that, so they really needed to kind of drag this whole bit out of the sheriff's first time exploring this maze. And like for being so absurd, because this movie's fucking absurd. There are a few moments throughout the course of the film that where it operates with an element of like well-timed realism that genuinely kind of adds to the experience, at least for me. Like so, the scene where the sheriff finds Tanya, he goes through the house, he explores, he finds the blood in the bathroom, then he discovers the maze, and it feels like strangely authentic and real and like I said, suspenseful. There's this strange, unusual storyline that we're working off of, but oftentimes with the makeup, this awful makeup playing against it, the fact is like some of these scenes do manage to gel and land and succeed in ways I did not expect them to. And I did find this whole suspenseful creeping moment as the sheriff was kind of just discovering how massive this is to be a rather well paced out cinematic moment. What it leads to is pretty lackluster, but this sequence as a whole I found pretty damn enjoyable.
Well, it does build some suspense because we know that Evelyn's down there, right? And she knows this maze better than anybody. So at any moment she could pop out and sickle the sheriff. And I think it was a very smart move for them to make his journey through this maze very slow and deliberate, because we are expecting as the audience her to come out at any minute. So it does give us kind of an edge of the seat few minutes while he's doing this. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen because what ends up happening is he goes into the room that we saw at the beginning with Lori, where she was doing her seance, and Evelyn is there. And she turns around and just attacks him with the sickle. And as she swings the sickle at him, she misses and it gets stuck in one of the wood beams. And then there is this very awkward struggle between the two of them.
Oh, it's so awkward.
Where I'm thinking the whole time, okay, and I don't know if you caught this, he barely tries to fight back. Like he lets her punch him, he lets her choke him, and he's doing nothing. And I'm like, dude, you're the fucking sheriff. You know this broad just killed a bunch of people. You found their bodies. Hit her. Do something. And I don't know if it's because they were trying to make it so that, oh, it's the sheriff, he's hesitant to hit an old woman, or if it was the fact that they didn't really want to work on blocking out the stunt. You know what I mean? So what ends up happening is very awkward. She like chokes him. I have to give it to her. This old broad is going full force. She's not backing down. She jumps up on choking him, and he does finally lightly punch her, and she falls back against the beam, against the wall, and smacks her head. And as she's like coming to, the beam falls from the ceiling that has the sickle in it, and it cuts her in the neck. It's very awkward. Very awkward.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's one moment leading up to this where, like, and I'm happy they had this. They had one more scene of Evelyn having one of her weird little breakdowns in the maze where she's hearing the voices and everything. And I think that, like, even if it's not something supernatural, even if it's just what's going on in her head, you needed that kind of reminder that there is something more to the situation, that she's unhinged and that she's unstable. Because going into this big final moment, when you look at this on paper, this woman is not threatening, but she is someone who has unnatural murderous tendencies, for whatever that may be. And that's kind of the thought that you need to carry this through to make it at all impactful. And you're right, like, she does give it her all. And I think his reason for not fighting back is he's known her, like, he knows her by name. I think he's hesitant at first to hit this woman until he realizes, holy fuck, this broad is completely deranged. What did bum me out was the fact that the way the engineering of her death, while it was kind of impressive, the way it all played out, the execution was so kind of like clunky, and she literally dies just by chance. Like, it's not really at his hands. It's nothing anyone does. This, the maze starts to collapse. The beam comes down and it chops through her neck like an axe. And it's interesting. It's the execution is unique, but I think that it just kind of showed some of the overall amateur elements within the film, which is a shame, because if this would have been just a slightly tighter ending, I think it would have made for a way more impactful finale,
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very awkward. That's all I can say. And he bends down in front of her, to check, if she's alive. And we do get one jump scare where she comes alive and kind of like reaches out towards him and grabs his neck, grabs his throat. But then she dies. So nothing really comes of it.
Another bad makeup effect too.
No, it's horrible.
Oh my God.
Her face is all contorted, but you can just tell it's just like bad purple makeup. And you really don't even see like the impaled part of the sickle at all. Like they do not show that, probably because they knew it would look like shit. So you really don't even see the sickle inside of her throat, or it's just very awkward, very awkward.
And I love that she has instant, like, extreme dead face makeup seconds after, like, this injury. Like, she's got like purple pits under her eyes and everything.
It looks like she's been dead for like 24 hours, and it literally just happened to her. But she dies. Yeah, like you said, it's nothing anybody does. It's all by chance that she dies. Mainly her own fault, but she's dead. The sheriff goes back up, tells Tanya everyone's dead. They get in his car.
Well, no. He goes up and he tells her everyone's dead, and she immediately starts weeping. And then that door opens, and lo and behold,
I was going to say that they run into Al. Al comes in. As they leave, Al comes back in, and she's like, "Oh, Al!"
But this is a big thing that you and I need to discuss because I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on this. Al, who for the like a large chunk of the finale was stepping up to the plate as be like the kind of like hero, apparently like hit his head when everything collapsed and just disappears
Disappeared.
for like 10 minutes.
I thought that too, and it's my note. I do have a note that says, "Where was Al this whole time?" Fuck if I know. Yeah, it's such an odd. This film makes some odd choices with its characters, and that is one of them because, like you said, Al was being set up to be like the hero of the film, right? It almost made more sense for that to actually happen. Like I feel like it'd almost be a more satisfying ending if the sheriff would have been killed and Al would have been the one that had that final struggle with Evelyn before she got killed. But it just doesn't pan out that way. He disappears and just happens to waltz back into the motel room right as they're leaving. Yeah, I don't know, Roger. I don't know why that decision was made. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like the film realized they had. I think the film realized it had one too many characters, maybe at the end, and they kind of didn't know what to do with having that many survivors.
It almost feels like they like had the actor who played Al for one less day than they anticipated and had to do like a quick rewrite or something. Like that's honestly how it feels. Because like, yeah, Al just you just feel like Al would naturally have been more present for these final moments. And like I said at the beginning of the review, the sheriff, you know, at the beginning of the movie, you think he's going to be very present, and then he kind of just is pulled back. Like they don't flesh him out, they don't develop him. Instead, they spend all this time developing the characters in the motel. So to suddenly thrust the sheriff back into the focal figure for the last like less than 10 minutes of the movie was a really awkward choice. It was not I don't think it was flattering to the satisfaction level for the finale. Like I would feel way more satisfied seeing Al get the best of her and like avenging like his fallen comrades who recently just died by losing their hands. Like you know, I would have felt more satisfied if that was the ending versus the sheriff just waltzing back in, coming downstairs, finding this old woman and accidentally killing her. It's really like not a satisfying payoff at all.
Yeah, the ending. Yeah, the ending leaves a lot to be desired. To be honest with you, just how it all plays out. But what ends up happening is they all go back to the car. They drive Al's car to the fallen tree. They all cross over the tree to get into the sheriff's car and drive away. And I got to say, as they drive away, we do get a brief glimpse of ghostly Lori, Evelyn's daughter, watching them as they drive away. And I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah, man. That again, like, well, here I have a theory on that as well. One thing I did like is as they're leaving, I like that they showed just how fucking difficult it was to get out of that goddamn mountaintop motel. Because, like, first of all, they have to take one car down, and that car becomes like stuck in the mud because it's so fucking muddy. And then because of the fallen tree, they'll have to get out of that car and get in the cop's car, and then they drive away. Like, it's an effort. So I get like why they were trapped at the motel. It makes it seem easily justified why they were not able to leave. But the introduction of this specter or this like zombie version of Lori at the very end, A, very much is one of the reasons I was like, this has to have a supernatural like element to it. Like she had to have something to do with this because if you're going to start the movie off with a goddamn seance and you're going to end it with this mysterious ghostly vision of this character, like don't tell me there's not something somewhat supernatural going on over the course of this movie, or don't fucking have it. Why would you introduce it with a seance, end it on a ghost zombie, and not have it mean anything to this actual character, villainess, that is Evelyn? That had to have had some sort of an impact, at least in my mind. I just think they poorly executed it. Or they simply thought that, oh, maybe we can help like beef up this ending a little bit by giving like a what if there was like a ghost at play. Like I wonder if they filmed that afterwards because those shots do not intercut whatsoever. Like it's completely separate. The ghost was filmed on a separate day, I bet you anything, because she's just standing there watching in her own shots and then you just see the car driving away awkwardly. I wonder if they went back and like added that in to kind of add a more of a mysterious element to the final revelation, you know?
my takeaway in it of it is that it's was just kind of thrown in there. I don't think honestly that the script really was meant to include any supernatural elements. It seems to me like it was pretty straightforward as a slasher flick. I mean, I know you mentioned your the little clues that tuned in it that there might be like a supernatural element at play, and I could totally understand that. I've never gotten that impression. That could be. I don't know. To me, it just seems like something that was added in at the end. To try to be like, ooh, let's give them a kind of a shock ending. Let's leave
Yeah,
them with
that
something to
makes
think
sense.
about.
Yeah.
But the script in regards of like the horror element, the script doesn't seem that thought out. The horror elements of this film are pretty, I don't know, with the exception of a couple of them, are pretty just like meh. I think what makes the film stand out a little bit is the location. I mean, you could not have found a better location to film this film at. The whole tunnel thing is very atmospheric. There is just this tense atmosphere that permeates throughout the entire film, just because of like the dirtiness and the sleaziness of this place. It just leaves you very uncomfortable as you're watching. But to me, it was just I hate to say this because I think the film does a lot of things right, but to me, this film comes off as being a cash grab to make some money off the popularity of the slasher genre at the time. I don't see it as being anything more than that. But I think, with that said, it does it a lot better than some of the other shit we've watched.
Yeah, man. I will say, like, overall, there are plenty of issues with this movie. The villainess being one of them, when she's at her worst. However, even within that character and what she is and how she operates, they still manage to have several moments with her that I enjoyed or I did find effective. Like, I want to go back and acknowledge a few of the things I thought were positive. There were a few moments of her emerging from the shadows that I thought she was genuinely, like, creepy as fuck. Like, when she's in her kind of glazed over, I'm gonna say possessed, meaning that's how she reads, transfixed kind of mentality. She is ominous and creepy and unsettling, and I think she works overall as a fully fleshed out character. Does she work? No, but she has moments that she is effective. Also, I like the moments when she, like, like when she planted the snake and she was like giggling and all into it. Like, I love the joy that she takes from this kind of mischief she's causing. I don't I just don't know, like, where it's coming from. I don't know what it's stemming from. I don't know what kind of mental issue she has. I don't know what the main problem was that affected her to go into the hospital to begin with. All they give us is that she was in a mental institution. That's it. If they would have thought that out more and set it up more, like, this is a movie. I'll say this, Troy. If this movie got a remake and they did fucking follow through with that concept I have, that this is somehow tied in to the daughter, taking advantage of her, like, mental weakness, like a Deborah Logan kind of approach almost. The Haunting of Deborah Logan kind of approach to this. Or yeah, the Take You Deborah Logan. If they would kind of give it that kind of vibe and treat it like a what exactly is wrong with her kind of approach, this could be a terrifying movie. Unfortunately, in its first attempt at this story, it's not terrifying. It's just at times effective.
Yeah, I would say that's I think that's a perfect summary. My big issue with the film is the villain. I said it, underdeveloped. She's not intimidating. She's not scary. Like, it's an old elderly woman. I would have liked to have seen more interaction with her and the guests instead of her just being like this sort of background figure that's just there to cause mischief and ultimately kill. We don't know anything about her, but like I said, the positives of the film, I think the characters are pretty interesting, and the atmosphere is pretty great, and the tension at times is well done. It's not the worst film we've watched. I'll just leave it at that. It's one that I could see myself throwing on again and watching. There's some pluses for it, I think.
Yeah, I would watch this again. I would sit back and watch this a couple times because honestly, for everything that annoys me about it, there's something else that I found enjoyable or impressive or intriguing or interesting. I want to rewatch it just to simply try to figure out if there's anything more to the story that I did miss. It's just not necessarily easily. It's not easily. It doesn't come easily to the viewer. I'll say that. Like you got to figure shit out for yourself sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, and I think I'll just leave it at saying it would be interesting for me to watch this film again with the perspective that you have, that maybe it is supernatural, and see if I can pick up on anything. And I'll definitely have to get back to you on that. But yeah, folks, that was Mountaintop Motel Massacre, 1983. Right
Yes.
at the peak of the slasher craze, and you can, like I said, you can definitely tell that this was trying to cash in on a lot of the classic slasher films. But again, definitely not the worst one out there, Roger. So yeah, that's another episode. I don't think we really need to reveal, or I guess you need to remind the viewers what our next review is going to be. We actually, you told them at the end of last episode, but we had a little schedule change. So next week we will be doing what again?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the new year. People got things to do. I'm one of them. Scheduling is difficult. So for the greater good, I moved things around, and now next week we're going to be covering The Ritual with the extremely talented Chris Wolf, who has just more movies coming up that have not even been released yet that we'll get to talk about as well, because his career is just blooming and blossoming. So I love him. I think he's phenomenal, and we're going to talk about The Ritual, which I am still excited to fucking get into. But this was, The Ritual is something very dry and dramatic, and this is anything but. So this was a delightful, like, comedic hors d'oeuvre to what will be, I think, a very deep and thoughtful review with The Ritual for our next episode.
The Ritual, guys, Netflix, The Ritual, it's on Netflix. Yeah, so I'll have to start my Ritual viewing soon, because I'll have to watch it a couple times, I'm sure. So to get proper notes, because yeah, that's one that you have to pay attention to, that ending. Whew. But yeah, folks. So yeah, The Ritual. We want to remind you guys, please, 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 if you don't want to become patrons and get access to all of our awesome bonus episodes, patreon.com/Dark Night of the Podcast. If you don't want to do that, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Spotify now added that you can rate podcasts. That's brand new. You never used to be able to. So give us 5 stars on either Apple Podcast or Spotify. Leave us a nice review, and just share what we're doing. If you enjoy it, just let's get the word out there for 2022. We got big things planned. So yeah, I guess that's all my little spiel for the week, Roger.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the beginning. Is this our first? No, this is our second. Wait, is this technically our first?
It's technically our first episode.
Because of when it dropped, yeah.
We did not acknowledge that. This is our first episode of 2022, and it's episode 52.
Yeah. The number 2 is very pivotal right now for us. We got 2022, episode number 52, and on our Patreon, lest we forget, the best second entries into a horror film series.
The best part 2s, yes.
Best part 2. So, I mean, it's 2 is the number of the month. Let's just acknowledge it.
Absolutely, folks. So, yeah, until next week when we do The Ritual with the special guest, Chris Wolf, we will bid you adieu.
Adieu.
Keep your critters out of the garden.
Those guinea pigs, for the love of God. Keep them out.
All right, folks. Good night.
Good night.